Good evening. Chairman of the IIM Society, Mr. V.P. Singhania, Director of the Institute, Mr. Samir Barua, members of the Society and the Governing Board, members of the faculty, proud parents, family members, the graduating class, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to this convocation ceremony at my alma mater. It is 46 years since over 40 years since I passed out of these portals, and I feel honored to be here amongst you to congratulate the graduating class and share a few thoughts with you. This institution has been producing some of the greatest leaders this country has seen in the last 50 years, and I'm sure will continue to do so for many, many, many years. To all the young men and women gathered here, I would like to talk to you about the exciting future of India that you will be not only be a part of, but where you'll also be the drivers of change. Before doing that, I would like to pay my tribute to some of my mentors who shaped me to what I am today. Particularly Professor B.D. Shah and Professor Kuchal from the Finance Faculty. Because but for what they did in molding me, I would not be here today. Particularly B.D. Shah. It was Professor B.D. Shah who acted as my placement chairman and introduced me to ICSI, and what I could say was an off-campus placement move. Sent my resume across, I went for interviews, and then I took that job, dropping the other jobs that I got through the normal placement process. I can only say that he thought I would be the right fit, and I hope I lived up to his expectations. On a lighter note, before I start, I heard a lot of clapping for a few of your friends as they came up. I see that happen at every convocation that I have addressed, but I have never been able to figure out. There must be an algorithm for that, which will be my next task before I go to my next convocation to try to figure that out, as to when is it that the entire class claps and cheers a particular student who, or friend of theirs who comes to receive a diploma. There must be something very wise in that process. What is the India that you will enter, and what is the India that you will help to change? Our country has made remarkable progress over the last 2 decades. It is today viewed as a land of opportunities. I think when we graduated, it was looked at as a land of hard toil, hard labor. Today, we look at it as a land of opportunities. This transformation had its genesis in the process of economic reforms initiated in the 1990s. Which unleashed the entrepreneurial abilities of India's people. So I guess I'd be right to say that the transformation, the economic transformation that is seen, is consequent to unleashing of entrepreneurial forces which were till then dormant in this country. This transformation saw the rise of a strong services sector, the growth of new industries like the information technology industry, the biotechnology industry, and pushed traditional sectors like pharma and automobiles to become globally competitive. Among the many transformational developments of these years, I will pick 4 that were truly momentous in their impact. First, we crossed per capita GDP of $500 and $1,000 in the same decade. While it took over 2 decades to double our per capita GDP from around $250 in 1980 to $550 in 2003. GDP doubled again in just 5 years, and indeed today has crossed $1,500. This had tremendous implications for savings growth, consumption demand, and the ability to finance investment in the country. Suddenly, so many possibilities emerged, not only for growth of traditional business segments, but also for building a whole new set of businesses. Second, the decade gone by saw the rise of the Indian consumer as a key driver of India's growth. As per capita GDP crossed $500 Driven to a large extent by the growth in the services sector, we saw rising demand for homes, consumer goods, for financial services, and a range of other goods and services. These in turn drove economic activity, and the upward migration of incomes created a virtuous cycle of growth. Third, India quickly adopted and leveraged developments in information and communications technologies. In some cases, I would say in most cases, leapfrogging intermediate stages of development. This enabled the quick scale-up of new paradigms of distribution and service delivery in a range of areas. Fourthly, we saw the emergence of the Indian corporate sector, which is today operationally efficient, internationally competitive, and has stronger balance sheets. Operating cash flows increased over 9-folds between 1995 and 2010. This enabled the Indian corporate sector not only to leverage growing domestic demand, but also to expand outside India, acquiring backward and forward linkages, making Indian brands known globally, and also acquiring marquee global brands. The Indian corporate sector emerged from a period of restructuring and repositioning with healthy finances and globally competitive quality and cost metrics. From a global point of view, there is a shift in focus towards emerging market economies as global rebalancing was accelerated due to the impact of the 2008 crisis. The contribution of emerging market economies in global growth increased from 43% in the year 2000 to around 68% by 2010. India today is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, with the domestic economy presenting a number of opportunities for growth, be it in terms of unlocking value in sectors like agriculture or building basic infrastructure. This is the India that you will, in terms of your own career at this point in time. What drives India? I think what drives India today and will drive India in the next 10 to 20 years would be infrastructure, rural growth, urbanization, technology, and a big agenda of bringing into the mainstream 700 million people who have been left out. Agenda that is broadly called the inclusive agenda. These 5 will be the key drivers of the India that you will go out and serve. Infrastructure is a key growth area for the economy. The opportunities in several sectors including highways, ports, airports, telecom, urban infrastructure, power, railways and oil and gas. They're all big ticket items, huge growth momentum providers, and these are what I would call in active motion at this point in time. And the 5th plan envisages an investment of $1 trillion on these businesses in just the next 5 years. Just to contrast this, in 1996, we were struggling to find 100,000 crores. 100,000 crores at current exchange rates, something like $20 billion. $20 billion against $1 trillion. And we actually put up our hands and said it would not be possible for us to find this $20 billion that are required to invest in 1995-96. At this point in time, we're talking of $1 trillion. The changing character and potential in rural India should further catalyze our progress. The traditional belief that India's rural economy is agriculture-driven is gradually changing. In the last decade, there has been a marked shift in the composition of India's rural economy. According to estimates, India's rural economy had a share of 48% in net domestic product, much higher than the share of the agriculture sector. In fact, the share of agriculture in the rural economy has come down from 39% in 2005 to 30% in 2010. That doesn't mean that agriculture is no longer important. What it means is value-added agriculture, holistic development of rural areas are what are required as we increase productivity in agriculture and reap the gains of this productivity. And that is the India that the graduating class will enter, particularly those people, those students who are specialized in this area. This will unleash a vast consumption market in rural India, which as yet has not reached the per capita GDP levels that the rest of India has. And this provides, again, a huge momentum driver or a growth provider in the future. Such economic progress will inevitably lead to a higher degree of urbanization. Urban population grew from 220 million, about 26% of our population in 1991, to 340 million, about 30% of our population in 2008. It is expected to grow to 590 million, about 40% of our population in just the next few years. This will require the emergence of new cities and significant redevelopment of existing urban habitats. Numbers forecast for India are extraordinary. The top 3 cities themselves will grow to the size equivalent of several countries today. For example, Mumbai is expected to grow from GDP of around $36 billion in 2010 to $250 billion plus in 2030. Just to put it in contrast, Malaysia's GDP is currently around $220 billion. Similarly, Delhi and Kolkata would be in more or less the ballpark of Mumbai, with GDP levels of $250 billion and $200 billion respectively. The next 6 cities by 2030, the next 6 cities are expected to become 2 to 4 times the size of Mumbai today. So you would have, I would say, growth momentum which we never envisaged happening in the space of the next 15 to 17 years. And this is the India that you would be working in for a large part of your careers. Technology pervades every aspect of economic activity today. The rise of communication technology was led by the increasing use of the handheld device, with a spectacular growth in mobile telephony and increased connectivity. India is home to the 3rd largest internet user base at about 100 million today, and has the 2nd largest mobile subscriber base, over 800 million. While the number of internet users is increasing at an annual rate of over 20%, the number of mobile internet users has more than doubled, indicating the increasing usage of mobile phones as a means of internet access. In effect, I would say that connecting to the internet through the computer is no longer going to be the default. I think it has already moved to your handheld device becoming your default device for connecting to the internet. And that, along with what has happened with that handheld device, today the mainframe is in your pocket. 20 years back, 25 years back, the mainframe took a whole building. That mainframe is in your pocket today, and that mainframe is your device to connect to the outside world. And that, from numbers, is doubling every year. And that is the new India that we will see as we will go along. So broadband connectivity, which is being rolled out at rapid pace, will catalyze and multiply a whole lot of opportunities for the new India that we are looking at. Economic growth leads to demand for better services, better infrastructure, and a spurt in consumption demand. Shift in income levels and lifestyles will lead the Indian consumer to fulfill his and her aspirations at a younger age with an optimal combination of debt and equity. It would not have been possible without upward migration of incomes. When I graduated from this institution, my expectation, my ambition was to own a home just before retirement. I could not have afforded it before that. But the young Indian that we take into an ICICI bank or an Infosys aspires for a home before the age of 30. So that's where the structural shift has taken in terms of income levels and aspiration levels, and both can be met. Your aspiration can be met and your income level also has kept pace. So you can meet and fulfill whatever aspirations that you have. And this we do not see as slackening at all. Trends clearly indicate that Indian companies are also leveraging communication and technological advances. Just to put in context, if you look at ICICI Bank as an example, just 10 years back, 95% of transactions in the bank took place in a branch. People walked into a branch to transact services. Today, less than 20% of transactions take place in a branch. The rest of the transactions are either on the ATM or increasing on the handheld device. I would believe that in the next 3 years, I think the handheld device will become the default device to transact with your bank, or for that matter, for most other aspects in terms of you're dealing with the marketplace as it is. It will become the default device. And this starts again pushing the economy to new horizons, new frontiers. That's the India that you will see. In recent years, there has been increased focus on inclusive growth. I mentioned inclusive growth as a major driver going forward. And financial inclusion is a key ingredient of inclusive growth. Financial services remain underpenetrated in India, with substantial scope to increase access to financial services across the country. What I call 700 million people who are unbanked. The challenge before us is banking the unbanked, a large mass of people who live mostly in rural areas among low-income households. In the past, a key challenge was the high cost of delivery of financial services to traditional brick-and-mortar structures. Two key developments have changed this paradigm. First, regulations have been introduced permitting delivery of financial services through business correspondence, and secondly, the development of technologies using smart cards and biometrics has changed the way banking services can be accessed by the customer. Right from opening accounts to transacting, today you could do it with a very thin brick-and-mortar structure, with very thick technology that is interwoven into the whole process. In this context, the government's UID project called Aadhaar will be a path-breaking effort towards improving financial inclusion. It exemplifies how technology can be a game changer. The UID will not only help to create an identity and a unique identification mechanism that can help track credit history of consumers and improve service delivery, but also achieve financial inclusion at a low cost. Taking this a step further, it will also help improve governance and efficiencies in social sector investments. There are issues that people have raised around the whole concept of UID and Aadhaar. I would think the economic benefits far outweigh the challenges that we would have in ensuring that there are no negative consequences of the scheme. And I'm sure that this will be a huge positive good to our country. A major trend going forward would be the replacement of cash and checks by electronic payments. The growth in this area has been spectacular. Currently, around 250 million credit and debit cards have been issued by banks and are in active use. Electronic payments in the last year grew to around 1 trillion transactions, valued at around $7.5 trillion, excluding interbank transactions. If you include interbank transactions, the number would be even higher. This indicates the potential impact of technology, the way money is handled in the country. For large value transactions, today, real-time settlement is the way that everybody expects to do business. And I'm sure the development that I have articulated earlier in terms of smart cards and the ability to go out and engage with every customer on his handheld device or through other devices which are using technologies which are currently in development or have just been introduced, I think would mean that small payments would also increasingly be done through devices other than through channels other than branches, and would really mean that you would move away from cash as a transaction device. Mobile banking will thus further evolve not only as a cost-effective channel, as the cost of transaction through a branch is roughly 50 times that through a mobile, but also serve across the spectrum as a tool for catering to services such as travel, utility payment, remittances, and so on. The rapid growth of mobile connectivity, dropping cost of bandwidth, declining cost, and growing functionality of the handheld device, the ability of the UID to serve as the authentication basis for transactions, the growing volumes of electronic payments will all set the stage for a paradigm shift in financial services. And that is the India that you will go out and work in. India is poised for truly exciting times ahead, with several more opportunities and challenges emerging in step with our growth. The aspirations of a young population, an expanding corporate sector, and the imperatives of inclusive growth. The disruptive impact of technology will play a critical role in meeting these opportunities head-on. In painting a picture of India of future, let me share this proxy of China. China grew at a compounded annual growth rate of 9.5% for over 25 years since it began its economic process in 1979. The impact of such high growth was phenomenal. China's GDP grew tenfold over this period, according to China's official statistics, and its poverty rate fell from 53% in 1981 to 2.5% in 2005. The wealth creation infrastructure development in China is there for all to see. In many ways, we are at the same stage as China was in 2003. This comes as a surprise because we are given this bit of information that we have fallen so far behind China that we will not really get our act right. I'm not quoting the statistics to say how far we have been, we are behind China or whether it's a race with China. I'm quoting this to say that we are just 7 years behind China and our rate of growth is not flagging. And our belief is that the numbers we do clearly indicate that the per capita GDP that you're talking of, which is $1,500 at this point in time, will double virtually every 5 years or so. So I do not see this lead increasing, and we benchmark ourselves. If we benchmark ourselves with China, we get a fairly good idea where would we be the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and so on. And that is the India that you will help mold and help change and help drive as you go along. Economic growth and rising per capita income will lead to demand for better infrastructure, which I mentioned earlier, growing ability to finance projects and willingness to pay for infrastructure facilities. For example, while just over 22,000 megawatts of power was added in the 5 years from 2001 to 2006, about 50,000 megawatts was added during the next 5 years, 2006 to 2011. And it is expected that in the next 5-year plan, we will aim at adding 100,000 megawatts. And I believe that this addition of capacity will be possible, given the work, I would say, that is in progress on this area. There are hiccups. I believe these hiccups will be addressed as we go along. The speed of adoption of newer technological means, and its impact has been breathtaking. And as India continues to grow, technology will be the force for disruptive change. The scale of opportunity will dramatically change, given that the economy will double every 5 years, at least for the next 2 decades. There is thus significant opportunity to leverage technology to drive new business models. The next wave of evolution would be the impact of technology on driving an inclusive transformation, not only as a multiplier of productivity, but also towards democratizing access to information, goods and services, and driving the inclusive agenda by facilitating savings, investments, remittances, and spending for this large mass of people. It is important to realize that the potential that we have today needs significant efforts to be fulfilled successfully, and that the process of building the nation must continue. For instance, the demographic dividend, and you are all part of the demographic dividend, needs to accompany the skill development, which is currently at inadequate levels. Though over 90% of entrants to the workforce are literate today, institutional capacity to provide skill training is insufficient. The challenge today is in terms of upgrading skills and meeting industry requirements, both in the private and public sector. A related issue is that of basic healthcare and primary education for all our people, so as to enable the less advantaged sections of society to have the capacity to access opportunities in this growing economy. Inclusive growth is not just about subsidies and unemployment benefit schemes. At its core, it is about building capacity in the poorest communities in our country to lead productive lives and earn a decent livelihood. Investments in basic healthcare, primary education, and vocational training are critical to making this happen. The India growth story is based on multiple pillars: consumption, investment, domestic demand, global competitiveness, knowledge-based businesses, and industrial growth. India's key competitive strengths lie in a large domestic consuming market with a favorable demographic profile, an entrepreneurial talent pool with innovation capabilities, cost advantage, and potential for improvement in productivity with easing structural bottlenecks. There is perhaps no better time than now to enter the corporate arena in a country well on its way to graduate to an economic superpower. A final word of advice: learning is a continuous process, and you must look out for opportunities to learn so that your skills and knowledge are continuously upgraded and relevant to the needs of today's market and the markets that you will see evolving in the next few years. I adopted a very simple tool, as it were. I said to myself that I would be obsolete every year, and from 1996 I have made sure that I spend a week to 10 days trying to learn things that I don't know and go on the assumption that I am obsolete as far as my knowledge was concerned at the end of that year, because that is the rapidity of change. And indeed, if you do not reskill yourself, there is a good chance that one would be obsolete. So I would urge you to continuously reskill yourself as you go along. Look around you and you will see that Moore's law is alive and well. And Moore's law and reskilling will be something that you need to look at as lodestars as you go along into your career from this day onwards. With the strong foundation that this glorious institute has given you, I am sure you will succeed in whatever you all set out to do. I will end by saying this: there was never a better time to have been born an Indian, and you are getting out into that India today. My congratulations and best wishes, and God blessings to you.